LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me on the show today, Debbie G and Neo Positivity. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Indeed, we are. And Debbie G is going to be joining us in just a few minutes as soon as she finds a place where she can connect into a Wi-Fi. Because as usual, she's on the road, traveling around, doing the things that she normally likes to do. But she wants very much to be a part of the conversation today. So she'll be along as soon as she can. But in the meantime, our friend Neo Positivity is at the mic. He's got the shirt on, the shirt. It's always the shirt. He's very consistent in this way. How you doing, my friend?
Life is good, brother. Life is good. Get you guys a shirt, neopositivity.com. Pick it up. Wristbands, poker chips, pick it up. Any reminder you can get to bring the law of attraction into that moment, get you some.
This is the man who is the master of thought merch. So you want to make sure you get some. Go for it. Nice. All right. And we have a special guest joining us today. Her name is Kristine Scott. Kristine, she has, well, first of all, she has a rather interesting story, life story that she's going to be telling us about. But she began her career in social services, and she noticed kind of in the heat of, all the stuff that happens, tough situations, how she would overreact or freeze or just basically not react the way she would want to. Gee, that sounds very familiar to most of us, I think. So that kind of started her on an exploration that I guess ran over 20 years. And she evolved into becoming I like this word, a conflict resolutionary, not a revolutionary, a resolutionary. So first of all, Kristine, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Happy to be with you guys.
Glad to have you. And tell us about this interesting journey you went on.
Well, I have to admit, I was not ready for conflict. My first night running a meal program for homeless young people, there were fights breaking out. My purse was stolen. And I looked around this room and said, AmeriCorps is not paying me enough money for this.
Yeah, I get that.
I was ready to quit right then and there. Hey, welcome, Debbie.
Hi.
So I was just sharing my story real fast. One thing that happened in the middle of all of this chaos, there was this 14-year-old gal at this meal program for homeless young people. And she was like starting fights everywhere she went. And there were about 50 of them in this church basement. And my food volunteers were kind of feeling like I was. They were ducking behind the food table. And then this big voice boomed out over the whole crowd and said, "Hey, little bean, knock it off. You're messing it up for the whole burrito." And all of a sudden, this room got quiet. People had manners. And I was just astounded. Like, who are you people that you have such accountability to each other? And so that got me curious. Like, I need to lean into whatever's going on with these young people who live outside. And so I learned that the guy who did that was a street dad, and they have street families, and that there's a street culture. And their street dad saw that there was a threat to this meal program. And he did what he needed to do to keep his community fed.
Wow.
Right. And so that was the beginning of my journey. Like, that's the moment where I said, well, even though these guys make me really uncomfortable, I'm gonna stick around because I think I have something to learn from them. And I'm going to write out my AmeriCorps term. And sure enough, that turned into a social services career and nonprofit management career. And I moved in that time from being conflict averse and conflict avoidant to being like pro-conflict. It's the place that we are honest, we are raw, and that we can create the strongest connections with each other.
Wow. Nice. What a great story. Now, Neil, I got to go to Neil here for a second, Kristine, because Neil used to be a cop. So I got to get his cop perspective on this. What are you thinking about as Kristine is telling that?
I'd have to ask first, the Papa Bear, whatever, what he was in there too as a homeless person?
Yeah, he's a 17-year-old kid who just saw what was going down and made this announcement.
Sound like he was top dog in there, Sound like he was the one to be feared if everybody shut it down. I love the analogy the whole bean, it makes you think, bean burrito, I'm just one bean in a part of this system and I'm about to mess it up for everybody else. I love how it worked. Normally that wouldn't work. So he was definitely the most to be feared person in there. But at the I don't know if you're familiar with Camden, New Jersey, but yeah, it's a hood. So I'm very familiar with all the halfway houses and homeless shelters filled up, all that good stuff, bad stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. Very interesting. And Debbie G has her own story that she has gone through. Not at all like what Kristine was just describing, Debbie, but what's your take on it?
In reference to her experience, in reference to your experience with accountability and how that they were working together as a team, and it's definitely, I call that emotional intelligence on steroids. That's, and that is the space that we take when we take accountability for our own actions and our own behavior, and we stop doing the finger pointing, we get a lot further. And I also love that you share about being pro conflict. I just finished a class in argumentation, and yeah, it was brilliant, because there's constructive ways to step forward in an argument that allows for each party to be heard, also hold their ground, and also possibly explore the idea that there might be more to this, and to use the tool of curiosity to find out more. So I love what you're talking about. To me, that is just, it's beautiful. It's all about how that we really truly connect with each other as human beings. So thank you for being here, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. And if I can riff off of what you're saying about that curiosity, like normally we are curious people, but for us to be curious, we have to feel safe. And when conflict shows up, what typically happens is our biology system takes over and we get hacked. And, especially Neo, as somebody who used to work law enforcement, you guys know, you saw what would happen when fellow officers would get hacked. Their biology is running the show as opposed to their logic, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You get a lot of training on how to not let that happen to you. But
it's great. That's always been my biggest thing. There's zero training on that. Oh, it's not even touched on or spoken about in the police academy.
Oh dear.
And then they wonder why stuff happens.
Yeah, no, that's should be job number one for folks. And that's what I train people in my working with teams. And like the Seattle Space Needle, for example, is one of my clients. Like I come in and I train everybody. Your number one job is to not let yourself get escalated. And here's why it's so hard, because we have this evolution in our bodies that didn't keep up with the evolution that happened in our cities and in our societies, right? So we still have all of this old stuff and this little lizard brain that can still trigger that full-on hyper alert. And what a lot of people don't know is our lives don't even have to be threatened, don't even have to be close to be threatened for the lizard to freak out. Anybody says, wow, I really don't like your t-shirt, Neo, and your little lizard is going to respond to that, because that's a threat to your status. That's a threat to how you see yourself.
Yeah, so the little lizards suck because it's so involuntary. It's so automatic, and it slips its way into your thought process so easily that you don't even know it's there until you're like, whoa, what the hell?
Right.
And the key is, how soon do you catch that?
Mm-hmm.
The sooner you catch that, to me, that's the better you are at the law of attraction. And I don't mean catch it proactively. You've got your mind programmed to kind of wake you up from that. Could be 30 seconds, could be 30 minutes. And that's where you gauge yourself at. When you can get your mind to wake you up from that type of crap on its own, fast, that's when you can enjoy life more. Yeah.
So I train people this is what it feels like when you've been hacked. Notice these symptoms in your body about your pulse rate, your breath rate, right? You're feeling like everybody's out to get me. I have no allies. I have no friends. All of that kind of thinking. Oh, you're probably hacked right now. And once that's happened, you're pretty worthless for about 20 minutes. So you might as well just step away, because it's only going to get worse from here.
Now, right? let me ask you this. What happens when you can't, because the phone is ringing? That next phone call for the next meeting has nothing to do with that top, or could have something to do with it. What is it you train people to do in that instance?
Well, there is actually a moment before you're full on gone down that biological waterfall, right? So what I train people to do is recognize it when they start to feel flooded, and to step back for a moment and to actually interrupt the system before it takes over. So you can do that a few ways. The most powerful way is moving your body out of the situation, right? Because your body is like taking an assessment and saying, oh, this is the situation that is about to kill me, right? So you do something as simple as saying, you know what, I got to hit the bathroom, I'll be right back. All of a sudden, your body can no longer believe that you are trapped in this situation. Or somebody says something to you that's really offensive. Wow, that's an interesting perspective. Can I get back to you? I've got to handle this thing over here. The moment you've done that, you're no longer under duress, and you're no longer handling the situation on somebody else's terms.
Disassociating yourself from it completely.
Exactly. That. The other way you can tell your body that you're in power without having to step away is to do the 5 breaths. And I train people, you make sure that you count on the inhale and count on the exhale. Make that exhale twice as long, twice as many counts, right? And that just tells your body that, oh, somebody's thinking about me and somebody's in charge of me. I don't have to let the lizard tell me what to do right now.
Nice.
Because, they've studied our hearts, and our hearts are actually getting messages from our parasympathetic and our sympathetic nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And our parasympathetic is where our green zone, our curiosity, our ability to connect with other humans, to digest our food, be happy, like all of that comes from our green zone, right? But then our sympathetic nervous system is what that lizard is triggering in us. That's telling our heart to like speed up. Everything is terrible right now, right? So we don't have to let that be the only voice.
And you've made a couple of references, actually 3 or 4 references here to connectedness to other people, which is a topic that I love. I bring it up a lot. Others on the show bring it up, guests bring it up, and I've been realizing more and more over the last 6 to 9 months just how important connectedness is. In fact, I'll tell you something. You may already know about this one. I don't know, but I like to reinforce this anyway, just by bringing it up periodically. One of the leaders of the positive psychology movement, Sean Aker, did a study at Harvard University in which he surveyed about 1/5 of the entire population, trying to identify what it is that enables students at Harvard and ultimately people in general throughout society to become successful. And what factors can you point to? If you can see something in advance, does that give you a clue that this person is going to succeed in whatever they're trying to succeed in later on in life? And he developed this really long survey, had all these questions in it, and he threw one question in at the end just as kind of an afterthought, and that was the only one that scored any level of discernibility statistically. All the rest of them, he couldn't prove anything. He tried, like, how often they do homework. No, that didn't actually indicate anything. Or where did they do their studying, or what courses did they take, or what professors did they work with, or who, what family did they come from? None of it correlated except for one statistic, and that was social connectedness. How connected were they to other people? And he was astonished to find out that the correlation between connectedness and success of any kind in life is 0.7, which is almost twice the correlation between smoking cigarettes and getting cancer. So it's a very, very high level of correlation. So that's why I've been so fascinated by this idea of social connectedness. You mentioned it in your story about the father figure, the street father, so to speak, who basically silenced the family. Well, they were all connected. They were all socially connected. You talked about your own feeling of being unconnected, disconnected in that situation. You talked about how when that lizard brain is taking over, we feel like we have no friends. So another form of disconnection. Connection seems to be playing a very significant role in what you have done, what you have encountered, and what you're talking about.
Human nature, community. It's in us. It's a part of us. And when we're not aligned with it, we're not going to be as successful at anything, even breathing, as we would if we were aligned with it. So when you see people who are like millionaires, but they haven't talked to their parents or their kids in years, and they're like depressed and stressed, and they end up getting cancer and stuff like that, it's tragic. It's tragic.
Yeah.
But it does. But then again, I have to say this: it doesn't have to be your biological brother and sister.
Mm-hmm.
Your community, you will attract to you, as long as you don't push them away. You'll attract them to you, and you'll find yourself laughing all the time with them and having good times. So bring that, find that, and invite that into your lives, everybody, please.
When you're doing your teaching to people who are learning the methods that you're teaching, how do you bring the social connection in?
That's a great question. Most of the people who hire me are really worried about their customers, right? So if you are the Space Needle, you want everybody to have a really good time when they go up to the Space Needle, right? And so we're talking mostly about like, how are your customers feeling? Are they having a great experience? But I've also worked with social service settings, with wineries, with like all kinds of different industries. One of my newer clients is actually in construction. They're having interpersonal tension issues. And so basically what I'm inviting people to do is first learn what the skills are to de-escalate themselves, and be very in touch with the last time that they were the screaming idiot in the room, the last time that they didn't handle it well, because we all have that. We all have those situations or those people that get under our skin, right? And just really be gentle with that awareness, like, oh yeah, that's how I felt. I was miserable and I was a jerk, right? And now imagine that person is in front of you. What would you have wanted somebody else to say or do?
Slap him in the face. No. Immediately. That was my God's honest answer.
Unlike that answer, thank you, Neil. What generally happens is people are going, well, I just wanted somebody to get that I had a need that wasn't being met.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what is it you need? What is it you most need right now, Kristine? Like, you're being kind of a jerk. What is it you need?
First you get slapped though.
No,
because when I pictured the last time,
I pictured
the last time I was raising my voice in a heated discussion, and afterwards I felt like a clown. I was like, man, and then I pictured that version of me in front of me, and the first thing I would do is I'd slap him. I'd be like, don't do that. There's other ways. Don't do that. And that version of me would be like, you're right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you gotta slap people. No,
I gotta jump in because your slappy is great, but can I encourage that we are perfectly human?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's this okay, so when I blow my fuse, I have this thing. It's like there's acceptance within there. I've also been triggered, and I'll say, is that true? Yep. But without the breath, it's really hard to get into the body and to get grounded. So I love all those things you were saying. I also love the visualization of when I am acting like a total butthead because I'm in my victim, because I'm totally feeling sorry for myself and my needs aren't being met. You know, what is it that I'm actually needing? And that's a big question. So let's address the idea that somebody doesn't know what they need, mm-hmm. because they really are not familiar with what a need might really look like.
Sure.
If you could, for me.
Yeah. What tends to happen is if somebody gives you their undivided attention without offering any threat or correction to you, right? Just like, okay, here's the boundary. No, you don't get to scream at me, but I'm just really curious about what you need. What tends to happen is all the tension, all the air goes out of your your billowing blusteriness, right? Because you no longer need an audience. All of a sudden, somebody's giving you this amazing attention.
Right.
And it's a little confusing. The first time it happens to you, you'll be like, what? Right? But then you will generally say something or do something that is more about what you need than what they need to understand, if that makes sense. You'll get across what you need for yourself, because what I learned in breaking up fights and dealing with all kinds of hostilities when I was running a shelter is just having a witness makes them feel less alone. Emotions do a great job, and our lizard brain does a great job of making us feel very isolated and very like our suffering is something only we could understand and only we could be in the middle of. And when somebody leans in like that, it's a huge contradiction. And all of a sudden, all of that stuff goes away. Right? You're like, oh, what? And you will come up with some great solutions. Go ahead. What was that, Walt?
How odd it is that it's a contradiction, because it's exactly what you were looking for.
Yeah.
But we still see it as a contradiction, and I think the reason why is we're not used to getting it.
We're starved. We're really starved, and conflict is huge right now in our society. And you guys could probably name the 3 reasons why conflict is huge in our society right now. Right? We've got this social reckoning going on around race and gender, long overdue, and it's all hitting us right now. Right? Like, oh, hallelujah, woohoo! Right? And we've got this pandemic, right, that has created unprecedented record amounts of anxiety and depression in the American adult population. We top the world for how much anxiety and depression we have, right? And then we've got this really unprecedented political divide that is just making everybody bonkers and hating on each other. So those 3 things, like one of them by themselves could create some conflict, but 3 of them together is just like a lot.
It's a ton. It really is. And when you add in when you add in all the other stuff that we experience on an individual basis within our own little circles, I mean, those are society-wide trends going on. But it's not like there's a lack of it going on at the local level.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because we all have all kinds of stuff going on in our lives. Some of us are, like Neo and Debbie and myself and listeners of the podcast are, constantly working on trying to improve our mindsets and so forth. But a lot of people don't even know the importance of mindset, first of all, and secondly, they're kind of locked into patterns that have been going on perhaps for generations. So, I mean, yeah, there are the big 3, but there's about 500,000 others that are really, really small too. There's like a bunch of them.
Yeah, there are a lot of them. And when you ask the average American, can you name the emotion you're experiencing right now? Only about 1/3 of them can. I would like to think I'm in that 1/3, but we underestimate how much emotion and how much biology is running the show.
Speaking for myself, I know that when I first tried to identify what emotions I was feeling, which was only within the last 5-10 years or so, what I found was my answer was often, "You mean I have to pick one?"
Smart man.
Because I couldn't put just one word to it. There was often like, well, I'm feeling this, but I'm also feeling that, but I'm also feeling that. So I finally just settled on, well, I'm feeling good or I'm feeling bad. It was simpler that way.
I spent the first probably 28 years of my life trying to find one reason for the problem or one reason and I was never complete in that journey. And it wasn't until I got into the law of attraction where I realized it's probably 2, 3, or 4, just different fractions, different percentages. And that's what it was, a bunch of. And then I was able to address, it wasn't painted over rust anymore. When I addressed the issue, I addressed all the things that were factored in, and then I was able to eradicate them from my life completely.
Yep.
And old narratives and things like that fall into those categories. So
you're exactly right, Neo, because those emotions are just like this little Geiger counter. They just tell us that something is charged. They don't tell us what it is. We have to go dig deeper into that, like what it is.
Jumping out of go ahead, Debbie.
I was just it kind of reminds, it's like our emotional metabolism, like these building blocks, and then it's got to have this release.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to take a dive. I would like it if you could take a deeper dive into safety. I do agree with you. There are a lot of dynamics happening in the world right now, and I think that they're great opportunities for us to view things differently and for us to make different choices. But the fear-based belief systems are kind of what are holding people there. But the thing with feeling safe, without safety, it's really hard to even tap into what your needs are because you're so busy. I'm speaking from my own experience only. When I'm busy protecting myself, I'm not. Yep. I'm like, I've got to protect myself. I don't feel safe right now. Now I've learned to identify that, but there was a time and I absolutely could not. I didn't know what emotion I was feeling except for angry. Angry, I did well. I can still do angry well, but I can still do it. But at least now I know what I'm doing, and I can own my shit, because that's really what it's about. You know, I can be perfectly human, but that safety is probably the biggest key of everything that you've been talking about. So I'd love if you could elaborate more, and what ways could we also create safety or learn to understand what safety actually means?
Yeah. See, I was lucky. I had young people who lived outside to teach me what was actually true about my safety. Because when I first started working with them, everything felt like it was unsafe, like everything. and so yeah, fortunately, they became really, really good teachers for me after years of me making mistakes and, you know, showing off all my biases. But what I train people is, so we have basically a busted threat assessor. You take the word threat and you break it down into my favorite 5 words. The first one is our tiny bunny. So we talked about the tiny bunny as our biology, right? We have this mammalian, this lizard kind of response system, and this is what it looks like when it gets triggered. You know, these are the causes, these are the feelings, how to hack it. And then the next thing is how we're socialized. How we're socialized is really ripe right now, especially in this country. So race, gender, class, income, right? Ability level, age. Like, we have all of these ways that we are constantly ranking each other without even thinking about it. And what happens when we rank each other is we would like to say, oh, well, that doesn't matter, and I'm not really like that. But when we get stressed, when fear is running the show, that ranking system is like very much what we're acting from. Okay. So our ranking system and our mammalian system are kind of like this in our beliefs. And even though we would like to say, oh, well, I know how to challenge my own implicit biases and I'll just read this book. It's like, no, because the next time you get stressed, guess what? That implicit bias, it's still there. So how we're socialized determines for us how much we need to either command and control another human or be submissive to another human, because we'll use that ranking system to determine that. All right. And then the R in threat is the real life stuff. Like, as you're looking at this conflict or you're looking at this argument that you're having, what's in front of you should be the thing that you rely on, right? But there's all these other ingredients. And we talked about the E as emotion, but it's also early memories. Okay. Early memories are a big thing that we will make it. We have these associations like, oh, when I was a kid, if I got yelled at, what happened next is I would get swatted. Okay, so guess what happens as an adult when somebody yells at me? I have this association that it's about to get painful. So we have to untangle all of that. And, you know, Neo mentioned that earlier. Like, yeah, you have to dig a little bit deeper. Otherwise, you're just painting on the rust, right? And then there's this other critter that is like the absolutist and the tyrant, which are the last letters of threat. And that just simply, for me, is we all have this part in us that wants everything to be black and white, wants to like be the person who has the answers and who knows better than everybody else in the room. And this is not our best listening self. This is our just take command person, right? We all have that. And when you feel that persona coming up, usually you're going to make some pretty big mistakes, right? That's the one that I have to apologize for the most, especially with my kids.
Debbie's face is just
I love it. Yeah.
it's just stuck.
Yeah, that's the face.
That's it. That's it right there. That's excellent.
That was brilliant. Thank you.
Something else I wanted you to address, and this is a topic that really gets touched upon a lot during the show, but I'm curious to know what your perspective is on perspective, because perspective actually can be a key tool in my experience in terms of diffusing one's own feelings in the midst of, you know, having a raw situation. And so I'm kind of curious what your perspective on perspective is.
Yeah. And when we are able to be curious about another person's perspective, that means that we are in that green zone that I encourage people to really rely on that parasympathetic nervous system where we can make that connection. We can ask those questions. One of my favorite stories was told by a woman who's a powerful change advocate and activist in the Black community. And she's sitting on a long plane ride. And it just so happens that the man next to her on the plane says a racist comment. Okay, so she can either get that headset on fast or she can like lean in. And she had the resources at that moment to say, wow, I'm really curious. Tell me more about that. And they had a 3-hour conversation that completely changed his perspective. It would not have happened if she had been closed, defended, or hostile. And we are not obligated to do that to everybody in our lives. But when we have the resources and we have that opportunity, and here they're forced to be sitting next to each other all these hours, right? It worked really beautifully. And I really encourage people, like, when you have the resources, lean in for those, because that is where you make the strongest connections. And and for my hospitality clients, that's where you're going to earn some lifelong guests and clientele, right? Because they will feel so heard and understood by you asking them those really open questions and being really curious. And what happened with this one gentleman on the plane is he just actually honestly admitted, like, I never really examined where I got that belief from. And the more we talk about it, the more I realize that it's not really accurate, is it? And she said, yeah, wow, that's a really great realization. Right?
Very good. I like that.
That's a beautiful story.
I want to jump in. Oh, go ahead, Debbie.
Well, actually, what I'm going to jump in and say is I'm going to be headed out. We just pulled into Colorado.
Nice.
And we're going to be driving here. And I'm afraid I'm going to stay on as long as my reception's going to allow it. Marshall Rosenberg has a similar story when he was off teaching and about this. And I love that she had authentic curiosity and she was willing to be curious about what was real for another person. And I think that that's probably one of the most valuable things that anybody could take away, because when I'm really authentically curious, it changes things. Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful story, though. Thank you. And it's been beautiful to meet you. If I lose you, I've enjoyed this. I would love your information. And Walt and Neo, it's always great to see you guys. We've got some catching up to do too.
We do.
Oh my God. Yeah.
No doubt about it. By the way, I CC'd you, Debbie, and Neo in the email that I sent to Kristine, so you've got her email address, so you guys can start connecting that way.
Nice. Beautiful. I absolutely love it. I want to have you on Unified Women Rising, so that would be super.
All right. So thank you, Debbie. If we do, we'll be glad to keep you here as long as we can keep you. But just before we lose you, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great because there aren't many co-hosts who actually take the time to connect from the road, and you're one of the very few. So I really do appreciate you for that.
Nice. Thank you. I'm just afraid because we're going to start moving, and I don't want to. So I want to say goodbye, but I appreciate you guys. I'm very grateful for each and every one of you showing up today. And your authentic beauty, your divine essence, you're all rock stars. Go into this weekend and just remember to tell somebody you're grateful for them just because, Well,
we love you, Debbie. That's for sure.
Definitely. Mad love and respect, Deb.
So, Neil, you were going to jump in. What are you jumping in with?
You know what? She said you're not obligated, to take the high road, I guess I'll just say. But I'd venture to say that you are, because it's like, take the high road or else, the Lord or universe, whatever you believe created you and is creating life as we go, put you in that situation to prosper, to learn from it, to meet that person. And maybe that's your next job opportunity. Or maybe you never even see that person again, but you change their lives in a way that you'll never know about. But you are obligated in every situation to maximize it, even if it's a crappy situation.
Right. And I think what I would like folks to hear is they get to make that choice.
Mm-hmm.
So if I feel like, oh, I have to, I'm not going to have that authentic curiosity. But if I feel like, wow, this is a great opportunity, because you're right. Like, we are given these just divine moments of like, oh, this might be why I'm here right now.
Yeah.
Right? Or this might just be why I'm here right now. But there are times that we're not lit up enough from the inside to listen to that. It's just not, we're not tuned in enough. And so I tell people, just be gentle with yourselves. It will happen again.
Yeah.
The universe is going to keep on knocking at your door until you answer. But just do it when you have those resources, because sometimes if you try and you just don't have it, it feels like a really big flop, and then you'll be less likely to try next time.
Yeah, it's like the old analogy about if you're a parent on a plane, make sure you put the mask on yourself before you put a mask on your child, because you have to have something to give before you can give it.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of de-escalation skills are about kindness. And so if you can't give yourself kindness, you definitely can't give it to this other person.
Yeah, that's a good time to put those headphones on, metaphorically.
I keep in my mind, I keep flashing to the red zone, I should say, when someone is just not them. They're so heated that they're not themselves. They're not thinking, and they don't care. And they're 1 second from getting physical with it. That anger. And it's like, how do you train someone who's never even worked at controlling that beast to control that beast? And in the hood, it's like that beast is what makes you get you respect. That beast is what basically is feeding you and keeping you from getting robbed on the way to your door from your car. So you rely on that beast your whole life, and then you get in society in a job situation and you have to turn it off.
Yep.
And you not only do you have to turn it off, but you remaining at that job depends on you turning that off. You can't snap on your supervisor every time he tells you you're late or you were late. You know what I
can't snap
mean?
on the customer either. That's even worse.
Yeah, so it's like it really is an unfortunate situation, I should say. The mindsets that are being pushed onto these neighborhoods and these groups of individuals. It sucks.
Right.
But as much as it's being pushed onto them, it's equally being left on them. You know what I mean? Like, as much as the situation is pushed on these Black communities, I still put equal amount on get the hell out of that. I got out of it. It was with some assistance from some great people, some mentors, some peers, karate, my father, but I got out. I could have shut karate out like a bunch of those other kids did. I could have shut my father out like a bunch of those other kids did. So it's like you can't just stay there with someone's boot on your face. You gotta find a way out of that.
Right. And I think you raising that there are whole communities that their survival depends on them not accessing their green zone, right? That green zone where they get to rebuild, renew, get in touch with their inner truth. If their safety does not even exist within the green zone for them, that they have to like have their armor on 24/7, that's a tragedy that we all need to be worried about.
You know what's something I want to bring this up real quick? I went to a lot of different schools, black, white, whatever. When I was in the hood, from day one thing I noticed that was a constant, every day, all day, was it was called cracking on each other. Basically, you're just talking trash about the other person. As soon as you walk into the school, look at your shoes. Oh, look at your shirt. And you're like, the shirt costs, this is a designer. What are you talking about? Because you don't like, and it's like all day. And then I'm sitting here looking, and then I see two people greet each other. They're best friends. And as soon as they're done shaking hands, one of them talks about the other one's pants. Dude, why are you wearing those pants? And I'm like, you have the same pants and you wore them yesterday. And so it's this constant barrage of back and forth banter, and it's all good and it's all love and they laugh it off. But at the end of the day, when you're at home with your brothers and sisters, you're in a red zone. You're Your parents are living in a red zone, so that's all you see is a red zone. Your
Mm-hmm.
teachers are in a red zone, that's all you see is the red zone. So it's like you got this mentality, and then all of a sudden you get in the real world with real people and with jobs and stuff like that, and they don't know how to act.
Yeah.
And then they go back to the streets. They go
Mm-hmm.
back to what they know, drug dealing and stuff. And it's like, it really is sad, man. That's why I try so hard to speak as often as I can about the law of attraction in any type of any situation I can, especially one involving poverty, because if they don't ever get this information, they'll never progress. They'll just get moved. Camden was once the Mecca of New Jersey. It was all richy, and now it's the poorest and most dangerous city in America. It's, you know, so they just move them around. Those people don't just grow and get jobs and be better and build up their neighborhoods. No, they just get moved to a new neighborhood. And so to discontinue this, we got to make change, you know, in those neighborhoods.
Yep, I hear you. Yeah, it's good that you're still thinking about that, and I'm still thinking about a lot of the young people that I saw on the streets that had the same inability to check the armor at the door when they got housing, and check the armor at the door when they got a great opportunity. And it's heartbreaking that we don't have that for everybody in this country.
I like how you call it armor. I'm going to start using that because it makes me think of defensive, and that's what it is, defensive. As soon as you walk in a room, you're defensive because somebody's going to say something about your clothes. You know, all the way to the situation where it's like, as soon as you walk in a room, you're defensive because you're the only black guy in the room, you know, and it's like, got to get out of that. I'm the only black guy in every room I go into these days. And it's been like that for a very long time. All the fly-ins, Walt, you see me in Georgia at an airport with 400 hillbillies and me.
Yeah, it's true.
Literally, I'm all the situations. So I'm used to it. But there was a time where I was just felt really uncomfortable because it was that defense mode. I was waiting for somebody to say or think something about me. And the craziest part about that is I was waiting for someone to think something about me. That's so stupid. That's so stupid.
Well,
how the hell do I know what they're thinking?
Yeah.
I'm sitting here creating narratives and I don't know what they're thinking. They might be constipated. And I'm over here.
But we all do that. Everybody does that. I don't care who you are. I don't care what background you have. We all do that. We all invent these scenarios in our minds, and the scenarios are almost never accurate.
One of the more advanced conflict skills I give people, and they always look at me like I'm so crazy when I tell them this. I say, well, so, you know, you see somebody over there and they're mean mugging you. They're just, you can tell that something is up their butt about you, right? I want you to go over there and say, hey, how's it going? I notice that you're not happy in my direction, and I'm wondering, like, what did I do to offend you today? And everybody looks at me like, what? I would never say that to somebody. You're crazy. And I said, well, tell you what, I got to try it out. And what I found is 9 times out of 10, what they told me had nothing to do with me.
Oh man, I love this.
Nothing to do with me. And if
you were just background in there while they were off somewhere else.
Exactly. If you have the audacity to go ask them, you'll find out it's very rarely about you. But because we all are working in our own little insecurity, our own little bubble, our own little isolation. We're just echoing
that is an
backgrounds.
I just realized that is an extremely nice way, an alternative, but extremely nice way to say, what the hell are you looking at?
This is true.
It goes in a totally different direction and you still get your point across. I love it.
You do.
I love it.
That's true. Well, I love also the phrase that you used, Kristine. It's nothing to do with me. Because actually, as you were starting that whole little narrative there, I was flashing to a television series that became popular within the last couple of years during the pandemic. It was nominated for 20 Emmys. It has been groundbreaking. It broke all the records. It won 7 Emmy Awards in its first try ever. And it was produced by Apple TV, who had never produced a hit before in their existence. And it's called Ted Lasso. It was introduced to me by another co-host named Cindy Chavez. I have to say, if you've never watched it before, get yourself through the first 3 episodes before you even consider deciding whether you like it. The first 3 are the toughest ones because it's so stereotypical and so corny and so like, oh God, I'm not sure I can handle it. But then they start behaving like real people, and then it starts getting really interesting. Well, there's this one scene in which the lead protagonist, Ted Lasso, who is an American, talk about hillbilly, he's an American from Kansas who knows nothing about British football, soccer, but he gets hired by a team, a fictional team, in the Premier League, which is the top soccer league in Great Britain, to coach their team. And there's a whole scenario about why that happened. But because of that, everybody is saying, "Oh, he's going to fall flat on his face. This is a big joke." You know, every possible diminutive you can possibly throw at a guy, he's getting, and he's getting it publicly, and he's getting humiliated by the fans. The fans are calling him dirty names and so forth. I mean, it's just and he is a totally positive person. He refuses to take stuff personally. He just he deflects and he finds the positive things. He's always looking for the positive perspective. He's shifting the whole character of the team through his behavior pattern, and so that kind of like becomes the foundational storyline. Well, along with that, there is one particular scene, I think it's at the 8th episode, in which the owner of the team, who is divorced from the former owner of the team encounters the owner and Ted in the local bar, and basically the former owner, his name is Rupert, is a really nasty character. We won't go into why, but he's just a really nasty character, and he is taking advantage of the latest situation to get over on his ex-wife, who is now the current owner of the team. He's trying to just humiliate her in every way he can possibly humiliate her. And Ted decides he's going to try to, in his words, white knight it. He's going to try to come to her defense. So he walks over to Rupert and says, now remember, they're in a British pub, right? So they got a dartboard. He says, you folks over here, you take your darts pretty seriously. And they do a little story about that. And then it leads into a challenge where Rupert challenges Ted to a game of darts because he has figured that Ted is a hillbilly who knows nothing about darts, and Ted has fed into it by picking up a dart and throwing it, basically almost missing the dartboard. So Rupert challenges to a game and says, how about if we play for like 10,000 pounds? Ted says, well, it's a little bit rich for my blood, but here's what I'll do. Why don't we play so that if you win, you get to pick the lineup for the last 2 games of the season. But if I win, you have to leave Rebecca, your ex, alone from now on in the owner's box. So they say, okay, yeah, I agree to that. And then Rupert pulls out his special case of darts that he carries around with him, shows off he's got the advantage here.
Darts,
carries around his own personal darts. And when he does that, Ted picks up a dart and says, oh, I just forgot, I'm left-handed. And he puts it right in the bullseye. So the game is on.
Nice. Lefty, that's funny.
Anyway, they get down to the last round, and Rupert is ahead. And Ted, talking to the bar owner who's keeping score, says, what do I need in order to win? He's got 3 darts left. Well, you got to get 2 triple 20s and a bullseye in that order. And so Ted, while he's getting ready to throw his darts, starts to tell a story to Rupert. And the story he tells is about how he's always been underestimated throughout his entire life and how he was bullied throughout his life. And people refused to take him seriously. And there were people who, to use your terminology, Neil, they talk trash to him all the time. And there was one day when he was driving his own kid to school, he saw on the wall a quote that had been falsely attributed to Walt Whitman. And the quote said, be curious, not judgmental. And as he gets to that point, he throws the first dart and hits the triple 20. So he starts on with the next part of the story. He says, I kind of like that. Because none of those fellows who used to belittle me, they knew nothing about me at all. In fact, I realized, to use your words, what they were saying had nothing to do with me at all. Mm-hmm. They judged everybody. Yep. They judged everyone in every situation. They thought they had everything figured out. And then he throws the second dart and hits the triple 20 again. And then he says, well, all they had to do was just ask some questions to be curious. Like, have you played a lot of darts, Ted? And if they had asked me that, I would have said, well, yeah, I used to play every day from age 10 to age 16, every Sunday with my father at the local club. And then he took the third dart and he says, and his favorite thing is barbecue sauce because he's from Kansas City where barbecue sauce is. He says, barbecue sauce, throws the dart, hits the bullseye.
That's good.
It's an iconic scene. The reason I tell you that whole story is that entire series was pitched to all of the top producers in Hollywood, to all the top producers in New York, and they all rejected it. Every single one of them, because the story was about positivity.
Yep.
And they believed that no one would ever watch it. It is currently the most watched television program in America. So I point that out to say, I think America, yes, we got a lot of problems going on. We got a lot of people in a lot of bad situations, but I think America is ripe for this right now.
Yeah, that's the shift.
Yeah,
that's the reason why we all came together at this time.
Yeah,
you know, was to be able to pull law of attraction forces. I love it. It probably didn't get picked up because the first 3 episodes sucked, though, right? No.
It's not that they suck. Actually, the first 3 episodes fit in with what most people like in sitcoms. I don't normally like sitcoms.
Okay. Yeah. I don't watch
too much. To me, the first 3 episodes were just the typical cardboard characters that you see in any sitcom. But after the 3rd or 4th episode, all of a sudden, some of the characters started behaving like humans, like real humans that you would meet in the street. And it was a shock at first. But they started to grow and they started to, and that's what I love. I love any kind of series or movie or whatever where the people feel real and they're growing right in front of your eyes. And that's what this series turned into. I think that's really one of the reasons why it became so popular.
Well, you know what I got from that story that just blew my head off was that basically the other people's, well, I have this thing about, well, you know, the mental world. I call it Ashira. Like my little sister's name is Janae. There's the real Janae. And then there's Ashira Janae that exists up here that I think is my sister, but it's not. It's got different opinions than my sister because I don't know what my sister's been through. So that version of my sister is my perspective. And it's basically made me think that like anyone I talk to that might be judging me, I can take the power away from that by just recognizing that's their Ashira version of me. They don't know me. They don't know anything about me. They're using it based off of people that they've met. They could have met a bunch of crackheads and don't put me in that category. So I love that. I love that. You just allowed me to be able to detach even more from that egoic voice that is like, you know, what are they thinking about you? I've known you over a year, Walt. Why didn't you say that story before?
I think me and Neo are going to both be watching Ted Lasso now.
Yeah,
it's a great series. There's 2 series of it so far, 2 seasons of it so far that are in the books, in the can. And I guess the 3rd one's coming out sometime like this fall. I'm not sure exactly when. I don't think anybody's really made an announcement yet. No. But yeah, I thoroughly recommend it. Get the first few episodes are tough, but get through them because it's really worth it.
And really. I think one thing that where I go with it is an analysis about why people bully. And I don't believe it's because they have all the answers and they think that they're better than others. I think it's that they're actually pretty insecure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that the answers that they're seeking are like, do I matter? Do I count? I don't count unless I play this role. I don't have impact on you unless I play that role.
Well, they're looking for that attention on and off the field. They want you thinking about them when they're not there. The only way to guarantee someone's going to do that is to have them fear you. Because if they love you a lot, you'll be in the forefront of their mind, I guess. But they got family and bills and other stuff to worry about.
Well,
but
and I don't think they believe that they're lovable. Because if you believe you're lovable, why would you need to control somebody?
That's good too.
Very good point.
I never thought about that. Yeah. But yeah, if bullies and all that other stuff and self-esteem, it's all linked up. It's all linked up. But then you got to go back. Bullies in school are different from adult bullies. Because bullies in school, you could look at their parents and see, okay, what's going on to you daily at home that would cause this. And then you got adult bullies that are just, you know, they might have been bullied at home, but they're not being bullied anymore. So what's going on in your life that got you still doing that? You know, how deep was it? How can we pull it out, eradicate that? Do you even want to pull it out, eradicate it? You know, so it all comes down to what we've been talking about this whole time, which is policing yourself doing, mental check-ins and making sure you're staying on top of your thoughts, because they will go rampant sometimes. They'll frolic. They'll,
They'll frolic. I love that.
Yep.
every now and then
what
one
are
to catch
what
your
are the
attention.
places? What are the places that you are not just watching yourself, but you're loving on yourself? Because you are seen largely by how other people see you, right? You see yourself when you look in the mirror. Your self-concept is often, at least when we're young, very informed by how other people see you, how they treat you.
I think it's an issue throughout our lives, not just when we're young, because
Right.
We talk about this quite a bit on the show too. If we treated our best friends the way we treat ourselves, we wouldn't have any best friends.
We wouldn't have any friends at all.
Mhm.
We
Wouldn't
wouldn't.
nobody talk to us.
Absolutely. We're rough
Yeah.
on ourselves, man.
Yep, that self-concept is really, really huge.
Yeah.
But out of the sea of voices trying to get your attention, like from the untethered soul, like a press room, all the voices and ideas trying to get your attention, you gotta wake up and choose the right ones. You can't go on autopilot. Just grab onto the one that's most real to you. And just to key on what you said before, how you think people see you is exactly how they're gonna see you. How you expect them to treat you and see you is exactly how they're going to treat you and see you. So line that up. Love you. That's why they say you got to love you first before anyone else loves you. You got to have that first. You could be like the biggest star in the world, but if you think nobody sees you, nobody knows you, that's exactly what you're going to produce.
Yep.
So we all got to work on that. We are all works in progress. But we can't say you're a work in progress and you only work on it once a month. To me, that's not a work in progress. A work in progress is this is every day.
It's constant.
That's how much it means to me.
Every time we run up against another human, which hopefully in our lives is all the time.
Yeah.
And the mirror counts too.
Yep.
You run up on a mirror and there goes some narratives. So you gotta protect yourself from threats. I say both foreign and domestic. That's very good. That's my way of doing that.
Hey, we're running out of time. Before we end the show, though, Kristine, we got to get some information from you. So you got to tell people about your program.
Okay.
How do they find you? How do they find your website? All that good stuff.
All right. Well, I am with Seattle Conflict Resolution, which is www.seattleconflictresolution.com.
Well done.
It's that easy. It's that easy. I do give away a 30-minute consultation for folks that are curious about hiring me to work with them. Oh, thank you for putting that in. And I'm just having really delightful conversations with folks where we find out, like, how is conflict showing up at your workplace? And what are some tricks and techniques that I can give you just right now that you can put into place right away? Whether or not you hire me to come work with you is besides the point. I really am an ambassador for like converting conflict into connection. And
you're a great ambassador. I mean, seriously, you represent your organization very well. So thank you for taking the time to spend with us today and share the knowledge that you've acquired through all your years of learning and experience. I mean, truly, that's very, very appreciated, very much appreciated, and we're blessed to have had it.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you guys.
We enjoyed it too.
Definitely.
And Neil, I haven't asked this in a while. Do you have a summit coming up? Anything that we should be knowing about?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I have a performance on July 6th. It's a competition. I'll be speaking about the law of attraction, of course. And then I'll be doing a 1-hour piece on July 8th. Okay. Law of attraction, start to finish. And my next summit is August 20th. So make sure you guys go and check those out. They're all at neopositivity.com. And thank you, Walt, for bringing that up. And thank you, Kristine, for the great information. We're going to link up later. I haven't done any real speaking in any neighborhoods that need it in a long time. So we need to connect and see if we can make that happen.
I like that.
Oh, I love this. Connections, man. They are everything. I love it. So thank you very much, Kristine Scott. Thank you, Neo. Thank you, Debbie G. Wherever you are out on the road, drive real carefully. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Great job, guys.
What happened?